this is Curated, and in today's video we're going to be looking at simple interest. We're going to prove this formula and see why this formula works and actually relate it to a linear equation and a straight line graph, right? Super duper interesting, I know. So let's look at what this formula actually means. So this A stands for the accumulated amount. And you're going to see why that's important. Okay, this P stands for your principal amount. Okay, which we're also going to look at, of course. And this here stands for your rate of interest. Now, it's very important to understand that it's the rate of interest. So the I will always be a decimal, very important. And T stands for your time period. Okay, now, what's very interesting to note is that your rate of interest and your time period must be coinciding, right? So if your interest rate is per annum, that's what this means over here, then your T must also be in years, right? Because annum is years or 1 year, and time period then must coincide and must be years. If it's months, etc., etc. So, for instance, let's say a guy. Or girl, okay, let's say it's a girl, and her name is Adriana, and she says, hey, I want to deposit 100,000 into the bank. Okay, the bank says, super fine, we're going to offer you a simple interest plan. Okay, they don't do this because compound interest is almost entirely better. In this case, when you're depositing, okay, it's not better in every case, like a hire purchase. For a car, for instance, is always using simple interest, right? But in most cases, compound interest is better. But we'll talk about compound interest later on. So again, she's depositing this 100,000, and the bank says, hey, you're going to have to deposit it for 6 years, right? And because you're depositing for 6 years, we're going to give you 3% per annum. All right, so now you have to say, okay, they could give you this in a question. Now you have to say, okay, what's what? First of all, you have to understand that this here is your principal amount. Okay, so it's your P, right? This 6 years, you have to deposit it for 6 years. That's your time period. That's your T. All right, and we can see that these two here coincide, so it's perfect. And this 3% is your rate of interest per annum. All right, and this here is your I. Okay, but remember, I always has to be a decimal, so this here is in fact 0.03, because remember, percentage, 3% is just 3 over 100, right? That's all it means. So that's why it's 0.03. Okay, perfect. So now we can say, that's super cool. But what would be my accumulated value? Adriana now says, okay, if I deposit this 100,000 for 6 years at 3% per annum, what am I going to have after 6 years? Is it worth it for me? So she would have to work that out, right? So we're going to just erase this here, and we're going to start working on it. So the principal amount was 100,000, okay? And the rate of interest was 0.03. Again, just note that it's a decimal, and the time period was 6. So this is going to be 100,000, 1 plus 0.18, which is equal to 100,000, 1.18, which gives me 118,000. And here you can put your currency at the end of the question. Okay, and you always round off to 2 decimal places. In this case, the 2 decimal places are 0, 0, like that. Okay, because, we don't have below cents, right? Cents just mean a percent, and a percent is only 1 over 100, which is what this is. So we don't go further below that. That's why we only put 2 decimal places. So she says, hey, I'm getting 118,000. Why does that work? Why is it that her accumulated value is 118,000? Why does this formula exist? All right. If you don't want to see why the formula exists, that's absolutely fine. You can just click away from the video. Really hope that helped you. All right, but let's see why. All right. So her accumulated value came to 118,000. But the way simple interest works is that it's actually a straight straight line. Okay, and compound interest is not a straight line. Compound interest actually does something like that. All right, it does something funny like that. All right, so actually, in a point of time, okay, we'll talk about this later. Okay, don't get me sidetracked. So this is what the simple interest looks like on a graph. All right, and here we're going to have time, and here we're going to have A. Okay, now we know that A is equal to P plus PIT. Okay, so P is your constant, and then T is your X, if you wanted to say Y is equal to C plus MX. Then M is equal to PI, if you wanted to relate it to a linear equation like that, which you can do, of course. So that's what we say. Okay, that's what this line equals to. All right, and so it is a straight line. Now, what is PI? What is PI? PI we know was M, which is the gradient, right? And P, which was 100,000 times by my rate of interest, how much is that? How much is that? All right, it's about 3,000. Okay, I'm not going to show the working because it's a pretty simple calculation. And C, which is your constant, is about 100,000, right? Because it's our principal amount right there. And then your X is your time. So at time 0, how much do you have at the bank? Well, you have your constant, which is 100,000. And then your gradient is 3,000. So every year it increases by 3,000. And after 6 years, all right, at time 6, you will have 118,000. How interesting is that? So that is why the formula, how we can show it in a graphical way. Okay, but let's try and prove the formula. Okay, so how do we now prove this formula? So here you can see it working out, and we're actually going to use that to try and prove this formula. So at time 0, right? At time 0, we had 100,000. Okay, at time 1, we know that M is equal to 3,000. So every year, I'm getting a rate of interest of 3% per annum of my principal amount. So I'm getting 3,000. So here I'll have 103,000. At time 2, I'm going to have 106,000. At time 3, I'm going to have 109,000. Okay, up until time 6, where I'll have 118,000. Super cool, right? But how can we relate that to a formula? Well, we know that this here is equivalently equal to the P, the principal amount, plus P plus what? PI plus what? Okay, at time 2, we know is P again plus what? Plus PI. So that is what it's equal to, right? It's but at time 6, we can see it here. Time 6 is equal to P plus PI plus PI plus PI plus PI 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, because all these PIs are 3,000. All right, and 3,000 times 6 is what? It is what is it? It's 18,000. So boom, that's how we get our accumulated value. And therefore A, which is our accumulated value, 118,000 is equal to P plus PI. And if we factorize it, it would be 6, like that. All right. So then we can simplify it further and factorize further. 1 plus I 6. But what does 6 stand for? Well, 6 stands for time. So it's actually like that. And therefore, we have proved our original formula. I really hope that helped. I really hope you learned something. I hope you understood everything. If you have any comments on how I could become a better teacher, it's all about learning. I totally love that. Any constructive criticism would be absolutely amazing. So thank you guys so much for watching. Really hope it helped. Stay healthy. Have a good day.